Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm your host, and I am really excited about where we are heading today.
And I am your resident systems expert. And yeah, today is a bit distinct from our usual programming.
It is. We are stepping into a very specific universe today. This is actually part of a larger series we are calling The Laureate Show. It is an entire series focused on execution architecture in food systems.
Right, which sounds incredibly technical right out of the gate, but I promise you it impacts literally every single item you buy at the grocery store.
Exactly. And before we get into the heavy lifting, the actual mechanics of the systems, I want to be very precise about the creator behind this body of work, because her influence on how we view food systems is becoming just massive.
It really is.
Her name is Liat Portal, and just to ensure we are pronouncing that correctly for everyone listening, it is Liat Portal.
Liat Portal. And her work is, well, it's a massive and frankly very complex body of research. She documents global food systems, but she does it all the way down at the ingredient level.
Right. She is looking at the absolute granular truth of the supply chain.
But for this deep dive, we aren't just looking at her observations in a vacuum. We are zooming in on a very specific intersection. We are taking Liat Portal's observations on the sheer chaos of food systems, and we are colliding them with the technical framework of Roy Traeger.
Roy Traeger, who is known for his foundational articles on a platform called Plantuit.
Exactly.
So our mission today, and this is for everyone listening, whether you run a supply chain or you just want to know why your favorite cookies are always out of stock, our mission is to understand why traditional planning systems are failing, specifically in the high volatility world of food.
And to explore this new concept called execution architecture, because we aren't just talking about, missing a few boxes of cookies in a warehouse somewhere.
No, the stakes are so much higher than that. We are talking about delayed signals destroying margin. We are talking about millions of dollars evaporating because a spreadsheet didn't match reality. And I think that leads us perfectly into the core tension of this deep dive. Because there is a question that I think haunts every CEO in the food and beverage industry right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Why do these massive organizations, we are talking about companies that are incredibly disciplined, they have decades of experience, they are full of the smartest people in the room. Why do they keep stepping on the same rake?
That's a great question.
Why do they keep seeing the identical operational failures quarter after quarter?
Because it is the definition of insanity, right?
Yeah.
But playing out on a billion-dollar scale. And the sources we are analyzing today suggest something really profound. The problem isn't the people.
Right.
It is the architecture of the decisions those people are being forced to make.
So let's start with what that failure actually feels like on the ground.
Okay.
The source material opens with this really visceral, almost uncomfortable image. It describes this glitch in the matrix moment for a demand planner.
Yeah, that part really stood out to me.
I want to unpack that because you have to picture it. You are a demand planner. You are sitting at your desk, you're looking at your screen, and the algorithm tells you to order 500 units of something. The math is perfect. The historical curve is perfectly smoothed out. The formula is completely clean, but your stomach just drops.
You hesitate.
You hesitate. But why? Is that just, is that just nerves? Because usually in business, we are constantly told that data beats intuition. Ignore your gut. Trust the data.
Right. We worship the algorithm. But that hesitation, that pit in your stomach, is actually the most critical signal in the entire supply chain. And the tragedy here is that in traditional systems, planners are actively trained to ignore it.
They are told to trust the black box.
Exactly. Trust the black box, don't question the math. But Roy Traeger's work points out that this feeling isn't magic. It isn't just some mystical planner intuition.
So what is it?
It is your human brain subconsciously processing thousands of tiny micro data points that the traditional system has just averaged away. It is you, as a human being, realizing that reality has drifted away from the plan.
Wow. So the software system is looking at history. It's looking at this nice, smoothed out average curve. But the human planner is looking at actual reality and sensing that something is fundamentally off.
Exactly. The plan and reality are no longer the same thing. And when you ignore that gut feeling, when you ignore that glitch, you end up with the massive business problems we see today.
Okay, so let's zoom out from the planner's desk and go to the C-suite. Because if I am the CEO of a major food company, I'm probably not down in the warehouse having a gut feeling about pallet counts.
No, you're looking at the P&L.
Right, I'm looking at a spreadsheet of profits and losses. So how does this glitch actually manifest for me? Because I imagine it translates into more than just a planner having a bad day at the office.
Oh, it translates into a massive headache. specifically what the sources call the CEO headache triad. It almost always hits you as these three specific things. First, you have inflation pressure.
Okay, sure. Your cost to make the food and move the goods keeps going up. Everything is more expensive right now.
Right, that is the baseline pressure. It makes your margins razor thin to begin with. Then the second headache hits you, stockouts.
The cardinal sin of retail,
Exactly. The product simply isn't there when the customer reaches for it on the shelf.
which is money you literally never get back.
Yeah.
Because you can't sell a ghost. If I want cookies and they aren't there, I either don't buy them or I buy your competitor's cookies.
Exactly. And then you have the third headache, which is the most insidious. And frankly, it's the hardest one to explain to your shareholders. Working capital distortion.
Working capital distortion. That sounds like a very polite, very fancy finance term. Break that down for us in plain English.
It's a polite way of saying, we spent all of our money buying inventory, but we bought all the wrong stuff. Yeah. You have a warehouse bursting at the seams with the yogurt flavor that absolutely nobody wants, and you have absolute zero of the flavor that everyone is screaming for. So your capital, your actual physical cash, is trapped inside cardboard boxes that are just collecting dust.
That feels like the ultimate irony.
Yeah.
You have spent the cash, you have filled up the warehouse space, and you are still losing the sale.
It is the ultimate irony, and usually the CEO's reaction when they see this triad inflation, stockouts, trapped cash, their reaction is to yell, work harder.
Of course. Add more processes.
Right. Add more review meetings, tell the demand planning team to dig deeper into the data.
Which on the surface seems completely logical. If the output is bad, put more effort into the input, so why doesn't that work anymore?
Because of a trap that the sources call the manual fix. And this is a really crucial piece of industry history for you to understand. 10, maybe 15 years ago, that work harder strategy actually worked.
Really?
Because you had literal armies of demand planners. When the systems spit out a weird number, a human being would catch it. They would look at it and say, that's wrong, and they would manually override the system.
Ah, so the humans were the safety net.
Exactly. They patched the massive holes in the software with manual spreadsheets and their own intuition.
They were the glue holding a fundamentally broken system together.
They were, but look at the food industry right now. Over the last few years, we have seen massive layoffs, team reductions, massive consolidation. You have way fewer people doing significantly more work.
So the net is gone.
The net is completely shredded. There is a physical limit to how many glitches a human being can manually override in an 8-hour workday. The people are burnt out, the teams are running on skeleton crews, but, and here's the kicker, we are still using the exact same old systems that require manual babysitting to function.
Wow. So we stripped away the manual fix, and now all those errors, those bad system calculations, are flowing straight through to the physical shelf.
Straight to the shelf,
Yep.
straight to the P&L.
Okay, so we have established the symptoms. The safety net is gone, the CEO is angry, and the warehouse is completely full of the wrong stuff. Let's get to the root cause of why the system is spitting out bad numbers in the first place.
Let's do it.
Because the source material identifies a villain in this story, and it is the concept called aggregation. Now, to me, aggregation just sounds like summarizing data. Why is that the villain?
Because aggregation is the silent killer in food systems.
Yeah.
It sounds harmless, right? It's just grouping data to make it more manageable for the database.
Right.
Most planning software was built decades ago on the idea that looking at every single individual item is just too messy, too computationally heavy. So instead of looking at a 12-ounce chocolate chip cookie pack,
The system rolls it up.
exactly, it rolls it up and just looks at cookies or sweet snacks as a giant category.
Which I assume makes for a very, very pretty chart in a boardroom presentation. You can walk in and say, look, boss, the cookie category is growing at 3%.
Precisely. It looks incredibly stable. It looks perfectly smooth. But the sources use a brilliant analogy to explain why this smoothness is actually a complete lie.
Let's hear it.
Imagine you are monitoring the temperature of your house, and your smart system tells you that the average temperature of the house is 72 degrees.
Sounds perfect. I'm very comfortable at 72.
Right. But in reality, your kitchen is currently on fire at 400 degrees, and your bedroom is freezing at 20 below zero. The average is 72, but the house is completely uninhabitable.
I see. So you cannot live in the average.
And you cannot sell the average. Let's apply this to the food industry with a concrete example, because the actual math here is where these companies are losing millions.
Okay, let's say I sell yogurt.
Perfect. You sell yogurt. You have two flavors, strawberry and blueberry.
Simple enough.
But the legacy system aggregates them. It just calls them fruit yogurt. Let's say your system forecasts that you will sell 100 units of fruit yogurt this week.
Okay, so the goal is to move 100 cups total.
Right. But reality hits. And in reality, every single customer wanted strawberry. You sold 50 cups of strawberry and you ran out completely. You stocked out.
Okay, so I lost sales there.
And absolutely nobody wanted the blueberry. So 50 units of blueberry just sat on the shelf until they expired and had to be thrown away.
So I lost money twice.
Mm-hmm.
I lost the sales on strawberry because I was empty, and I wasted money on blueberry because it's spoiled.
But here is the terrifying part. How does the aggregated system view that week?
It looks at the total.
Exactly. The system looks at the aggregate. It says, well, the forecast was 100. Total movement was 50 sold plus 50 wasted. Hey, we moved 100 units of inventory. Good job, everyone.
You're kidding.
I'm not. Or even worse, the system just sees the total sales dip to 50 because the waste isn't a sale, and it thinks, oh, demand for fruit yogurt is dropping.
So it orders less total yogurt for next week.
Yes, ensuring that you run out of strawberry even faster next time.
That is insane. It's effectively gaslighting the demand planner. The system says, look, here is the stable trend, but the reality on the physical shelf is total chaos.
That is the danger of aggregation. It hides the volatility that actually kills your margin. And this brings us to a really counterintuitive point that Roy Trigger makes in the articles.
Who is?
Well, in traditional supply chain theory, the stuff they teach you in MBA programs, volatility is the enemy. Those sudden spikes and drops in sales. The legacy systems call that noise, and the goal of the algorithm is to smooth out the noise to find the true stable trend.
Right. Get rid of the outliers so we can see the straight line. It feels safer. It feels predictable.
But in food, volatility is not noise. Volatility is signal.
Volatility is signal.
Yes. When demand spikes or drops, that is crucial information because operational reality does not wait for clean data. Food expires, it rots. Customers switch brands mid-cycle because a TikTok trend went viral or a competitor dropped their price by 10 cents.
Right.
If your system smooths all that out, you are essentially blinding yourself to reality.
You are deleting the news just because you don't like the headline.
Exactly. And then you act surprised when you get hit by the train.
Okay, so we have deeply established the structural flaw. We are aggregating data, we are hiding the fire in the kitchen, and we do not have the human manpower to fix it manually anymore.
Right.
So let's pivot to the solution. The sources talk about a major shift. A shift from focusing on forecast accuracy to building execution architecture.
Yes.
Now, honestly, that sounds like a bit of a buzzword swap. What does that actually mean in practice?
It sounds highly technical, but it's actually a massive philosophical shift. Look, the entire industry is currently obsessed with forecast accuracy.
Everyone wants a crystal ball.
Exactly. Everyone wants to predict the future. They want to know exactly what sales will look like 6 months from now. But here is the hard truth that Luit-Portal and Roy Trigger are pushing. A forecast that looks perfectly correct over a 6-month horizon is completely useless if it fails in the next 4 weeks.
Because if I run out of stock next Tuesday, the customer buys something else, and that beautiful 6-month forecast is already dead.
Right, you cannot eat a forecast. Which brings us to perhaps the most critical concept in this entire deep dive, the ordering window.
Yes, let's drill into this. This term, the ordering window, comes up repeatedly in the texts. Define that for us in business terms.
The ordering window is the specific time frame, typically 4 to 8 weeks in the food industry, where your decisions still have physical consequences.
Okay.
It is the zone where you aren't just betting on the future, you are actively playing the hand. Execution inside the ordering window determines your actual financial outcomes.
So why 4 to 8 weeks? Why that specific chunk of time? Why isn't it 2 days or 2 months?
Because of lead times and pure physics. It takes time to order and receive raw ingredients. It takes time to schedule the manufacturing line. It takes time to get a physical truck to the warehouse.
Right. Things have to physically move.
Exactly. During this 4 to 8 week window, the train has not left the station yet. You can still change the order size. You can redirect inventory from one warehouse to another. You can expedite a shipment.
And once that specific window closes?
It is fate. The concrete has hardened.
Wow.
If you ordered too much, you are going to have waste. If you ordered too little, you are going to have empty shelves. There is absolutely nothing you can do but sit back and watch the crash happen.
That is a really chilling thought for an operator. We usually think of failure as something that happens at the end of the quarter, when the financial numbers finally come in.
But the failure happens weeks before.
Right. It happens the exact moment that window closes.
Exactly. Teams do not experience failure in the far future. They experience failure when they log in on a Tuesday and realize there is no time left to adjust. They see the car crash coming, but the brakes are gone. The ordering window is the zone where the brakes still work.
So the execution architecture that Plantoid proposes, and to be clear, we are not doing a commercial for software here. We are looking at this strictly as a technical framework. This architecture is about building a system that lives entirely inside that ordering window.
Yes. The fundamental difference is where the system starts its thinking. Plantoid frames itself strictly as SKU-level execution architecture. It is not just another forecasting tool.
So SKU level, stock keeping unit, the individual item.
Exactly. It plans inventory and demand at the individual item level by default. It absolutely refuses to roll things up into abstract groups just to make the math easier.
So it is looking at that exact 12-ounce chocolate chip cookie pack every single time. It refuses to look at the average temperature of the house.
Every single time. Roy Trigger's insight here is that problems in the food industry always start at the item level. Therefore, the solution must live at the item level.
That makes perfect sense.
If you aggregate, you are, by definition, already too late. The goal of this architecture isn't to predict the future perfectly. It's to help the planning teams decide what to do next. Which products need attention right this second?
That seems like a very nuanced distinction, but a totally critical one. What is going to happen in 6 months versus what should I physically do right now?
It is the difference between being a spectator in the stands and being a player on the field. And this leads directly to another key distinction in the sources, which I want to make very explicit. The difference between visibility and execution.
Oh, I'm glad you brought this up because I feel like visibility is one of those ultimate corporate bingo words. I hear it constantly. We need more visibility into our supply chain.
It is everywhere. And usually when a company says visibility, it just means looking at a dashboard. It means a beautifully designed red graph that tells you sales are down.
Right. It's totally passive.
Exactly. You look at it, you feel bad about it, and then you go to a 3-hour meeting to explain to your boss why the graph is red.
It's a report card you get after you already failed the class.
Exactly. Execution is entirely different. Execution is the system saying, hey, the kitchen is on fire right now, and here is the exact bucket of water.
Oh, I like that.
It surfaces that a specific item is substituting for another item, and it prompts an actual order adjustment before the truck leaves the dock.
And that connects perfectly back to the burnout issue we talked about earlier with the manual fix. If the system is just giving me visibility, it's actually just giving me more homework.
Yes.
It's pointing at a fire and saying, figure out how to put this out.
Precisely. And that is the responsibility shift that Traeger discusses. The entire goal of execution architecture is to move that heavy cognitive responsibility back onto the system.
So the human doesn't have to guess.
Right. The system shouldn't just report the bad news, it should support the decision within that ordering window, where the decision is still physically changeable. It takes the sheer computing load off the exhausted planner.
I want to circle back to something you just mentioned, which was substitution, because we touched on it with the yogurt example. In my head, as a consumer, if I go to the store and they are out of brand A cookies, I just buy brand B.
Right, it's a simple pivot.
It seems so simple. So why is that exact behavior so hard for traditional aggregated systems to handle?
It's hard because legacy systems see brand A and brand B as two completely different, totally unrelated lines on a massive spreadsheet. They are strangers to each other.
Okay.
So if brand A sales suddenly drop to 0 because it is physically out of stock, the system doesn't know it's out of stock. It just thinks, oh, consumer demand for brand A has disappeared. People hate brand A now.
Which is completely false. They just couldn't physically buy it.
Exactly. Meanwhile, brand B sales suddenly spike because everyone who wanted A was forced to switch to B. The legacy system looks at that and thinks, wow, brand B is suddenly incredibly popular. We need to order 1 million more boxes of brand B.
It doesn't understand that the exact same customer just switched hands. It is treating a forced choice as a genuine change in consumer preference.
Exactly. It treats it as two totally separate, isolated events. But a skill-level execution system, because it is actively watching the granular volatility in real time, it can actually see the relationship.
Because it's at the item level.
Right. It sees that brand A dropped at the exact same moment brand B spiked. It recognizes the substitution as it is happening. That is the fundamental difference between smoothing out noise and capturing signal.
And that really drives home why this matters so much to the CEO we talked about at the very beginning. Because if your system makes that mistake, if it falsely thinks brand A is dead and brand B is the new king,
Yeah.
you stop ordering A and you massively overorder B.
And then 3 weeks later, brand A finally comes back in stock.
And suddenly nobody wants brand B anymore?
Right. And you are sitting on a massive warehouse full of brand B inventory that you cannot sell before it expires. That is working capital distortion. That is the CEO headache. And it all happens simply because your software looked at the average instead of the item.
It is really a profound shift in mindset, almost as much as it is a shift in technology. It's about an industry finally admitting that the real world is messy, that physical food expires, and that human beings are unpredictable.
And that really brings us full circle back to Leah Portal's work. She describes herself in the source texts as an architect of stories and systems. And honestly, I think architecture is the absolute perfect word here.
How so?
Because we aren't just patching holes in a leaky pipe anymore. We are talking about the fundamental structural foundation of how an entire industry makes decisions. If your architecture is flawed, if it relies on aggregation and smoothing, the house will always have freezing bedrooms and burning kitchens.
It is fascinating how her work ties these incredibly technical supply chain concepts, these deep back-end database rules, into a much broader narrative about how we understand truth in the real world. It's not just about cardboard boxes. It is about seeing reality clearly.
It really is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of where all enterprise technology is heading right now, specifically the obsession with AI, this raises an incredibly important, almost provocative question.
Oh, I like provocative questions. What is it?
Well, we hear so much about AI and automation right now. Every software vendor is pitching the quote-unquote AI-driven supply chain. But here's the final thought I want to leave everyone with. If automation and AI are deployed simply to be faster versions of the old aggregated manual processes, are they actually progress?
That is a heavy question, because if I take a legacy system that aggregates data and hides the truth of the volatility, and I just slap a powerful AI on top of it,
You are just making the exact same mistakes at light speed. Exactly. If your incredibly expensive AI is trained to just smooth out the noise faster than a human could, you are just building a very fast, very efficient machine for ignoring reality.
you're hallucinating control.
Yes, real intelligence, real technological progress has to be able to handle the complex, messy reality that humans used to have to smooth over. It has to be comfortable with the chaos of a single SKU changing behavior in real time.
So we don't just need faster calculators. We need systems that are better listeners to the actual signal.
Exactly. If your intelligent system cannot handle the grit and the chaos of the physical world, if it needs everything perfectly smoothed out and averaged to function, is it actually intelligent, or is it just an illusion?
That is definitely something for everyone to chew on. We so often think that speed and processing power are the ultimate answers, but maybe clarity, granular, messy, real-time clarity inside that ordering window is what actually saves the margin.
Especially in the food industry, because at the end of the day, you cannot eat a forecast. You need the actual product on the physical shelf.
You certainly cannot eat a forecast.
No. And margin isn't made in the spreadsheet. It is made the exact second the customer actually picks up the item.
Well, this has been a truly fantastic deep dive into the mechanics of what actually keeps our grocery shelves stocked or empty.
It's been great.
Now, for those of you listening who really want to get into the weeds, if you are sitting there running a supply chain and you want the full technical and business breakdown of everything we just discussed, I highly recommend reading the CEO article and the business framing article by Roy Traeger.
Absolutely. They lay out the exact why and how in much more technical detail than we could ever cover here. They really get into the hard math of the ordering window.
They do.
Yeah.
And if you want to follow the broader story of how these global food systems are actively being rebuilt, and frankly, if you want to see how someone brilliantly weaves supply chain, culture, and operational history into one coherent narrative, you should subscribe to The Lyatt Show.
It's a really unique journey. Lyatt Portal is building something very different over there.
She absolutely is.
Yeah.
So check out The Lyatt Show. Thank you all for listening. And the next time you're walking down the aisle in the grocery store and you see that empty spot on the shelves where your favorite cookie should be, you will know exactly which window broke.
And exactly why the average temperature didn't save it.
Thanks, everyone. See you on the next deep dive.